guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing another book versus TV show. And today I'm going to be focusing on True Blood. This was actually suggested by a fan, thank you. I've been doing a lot of these for vampire content. True Blood was on my list, but I decided to move it up because why not? So, as many of these work, I will be talking about character descriptions of the main characters. Not every single character throughout the entire show, but some of the main characters. I will be going over the book versus show description. And then after that, I usually do 10 to 20, depending, differences or similarities between the show and book itself. So, let's get into it.
I wanna do real bad things with you.
Sookie Stackhouse. Of course, we have to start with the main character. Sookie is played by Anna Paquin in the show, and Anna tried to do her best to replicate Sookie's look. She dyed her hair blonde and started using tanning lotion to give her skin a more sun-kissed look. The major difference, one of the major differences, is the eye color. In the book, Sookie has blue eyes, Anna has brown eyes, which really is not a big deal. The big deal that people had an issue with is that in the book, Sookie's described as a curvy woman. She is a size 10. She has a giant rack. For some reason, that's important, but she does. And she ain't a stick. Now, I'm not saying Anna is a stick human, but she obviously is not the body size that is described in the books. A lot of people had issue with that instead of, allowing Sookie to look as she's supposed to, they chose a skinnier woman. She did her best in the role she was given. But of course, she isn't an exact carbon copy of the Sookie from the books. Jason, on the other hand, is pretty much identical. In the books, he has blonde hair, blue eyes. He is the older brother to Sookie. He's a womanizer, obsessed with himself. He's known for dating every girl in town. And because he is an 8th fairy, it makes him one of the most charming people in town. He's very greedy, obsessed with himself, basically just self-centered, womanizing prick. Now, in the show and in the book, they describe him very much the same. The actor who played Jason fits the role pretty well. The only difference between the two is the eye color. It's brown and blue. The major difference between the two is not their physical look or even their attitude. It's a certain event that happens to them. In the books, Jason is turned into a werepanther. He started dating this werepanther girl, and an ex found out about it, didn't like that very much, and kidnapped Jason, biting him over several days, eventually turning him into a half panther, because you cannot be a full panther by being bitten. You have to be born into it. So he can turn into like a half panther, half human, rather than a full-on panther. And, eventually he actually grows to liking being supernatural. In the show, however, that doesn't happen. Well, he dates a werepanther girl, but instead of, it being consensual between the pair and him being kidnapped, which is not great, he is taken advantage of by this werepanther to try and get pregnant with his baby, which, alright, cool. And he is bitten, scratched, he's attacked, right, but he never turns. In the show, being bitten, it doesn't turn him. He's after this, he's still basically human Jason. Obviously, he is like a very small amount part fairy. But, that's about it. They kind of just and keep going. While in the books, it's kind of like oh shit! Which I guess for the show, it makes sense. I mean, turning him into a werepanther would cause complications, but that's what happened in the books, so I feel like maybe it would have been interesting to see what would have happened. Because in the show, he's a lot more like, I wouldn't say he's full-on against supernaturals, but he does have a little bit of bigotry, just a little bit. And I feel like if he had become a werepanther, he might be like, whoa. And obviously the way he would have become a werepanther was a lot more traumatizing in the show than it was, well, he was kidnapped in the book, so it was traumatizing. But you know what I mean? It's different. So, I don't know. Eric. Eric is also a character that is basically a carbon copy, as Jason is. Sookie describes Eric in the books as handsome, in fact, radiant, blonde and blue-eyed, tall and broad-shouldered. He was wearing boots, jeans, and a vest, period. Kind of like the guys on the cover of romance books. He's approximately 6'5", and described as 1,000 years old, which makes him quite the powerful vampire. A lot of people don't talk about that, but I mean, Bill was turned in the 1800s. Eric is a Viking. You know what I mean? Like, Eric is up here, and Bill is, like, down here when it comes to levels. You know what I mean? Like, Eric got power behind him. When it comes to looks, the actor they chose for Eric, Alexander, fits the bill quite well. He is Nordic, he's blonde, blue-eyed, tall, you know? He fits the bill. The only big difference is the backstories and how he became a vampire that is changed. In the books, Eric was a Viking that got married at the age of 16 to his brother's widow. The couple had 6 children, but 3 of them died young. The 6th child and his wife died of sickness. While returning home, trying to find a prospective spouse, because he does have kids to feed, he runs into a Roman vampire who turns him, and he's got a long-ass Roman name, turns Eric into a vampire, teaches him the ways, and it turns into, like, a sexual relationship situation, which, hey, why not? You know what I mean? I don't know if it was consensual or not, I hope it was. Sometime before 1860, Eric met Pam and then turned her out of loneliness. I believe he wasn't with his maker any longer. I don't have a lot of knowledge of what happened between the two, but he turned Pam because he was lonely, which, you know, sometimes a vampire gets lonely. In the show, it's a little different. Eric's father was a Viking king. One winter, a bunch of werewolves attacked the kingdom, killed his sister and his mother, taking the crown from his father. And Eric stayed with his dying father and vowed to avenge him. They went out trying to find the killer of his dad, and Eric gets mortally wounded. He tells his fellow Vikings to leave him, but they refuse. They stay and tell stories of when he gets to Valhalla. As this reminiscing happens, a vampire shows up, kills everybody, all of them, and appears at Eric's side, offering to save the Viking and give him life. Eric, wanting that more than anything, accepts and becomes a vampire. Now, this vampire is not a Roman. His name is Godric. He looks like a child. Not like a 10-year-old, more like, 19, teenager level. A young-looking vampire turns him. Now, this dynamic is quite different. Godric is in the books, but it's different. Not his maker in the books. But they changed it up, and I think it was probably for the better. When it comes to Pam, instead of being turned out of loneliness before 1860, in 1905 he was visiting San Francisco and saved Pam from being attacked. She worked at a brothel, and he found out that Bill and his maker Lorena were killing off her workers. He, shooed them away, and he spent time with Pam. Pam begged him to turn her into a vampire. He said no. She cut her wrists and basically went, "Turn me or you're gonna watch me die," which is just rude, by the way. And he caved, and he turned her. In both, Pam is very loyal to Eric, obviously because Eric made her, but they're very close. It's never been a sexual relationship. It's more like a brother and sister. They're just loyal to one another. Speaking of Pam Ravenscroft was forever stuck at the age of 19 years old. She had straight blonde hair, dark blue eyes. She had a round face, chalky complexion, and while at work, she would wear the gothic attire that was common with Fantasia. But when she was out of work, her fashion sense was dramatically different. She would change into, like, two-piece, tracksuits, cardigans, khakis, pastels. She loves pastels. Now, her work attire and her normal clothes attire are quite different. Well, at work, she's wearing, fishnets, black, gothic stuff. And when she's out of work, it's more conservative, more pastel-y. In the show, her name is changed to Pam Swinford de Beaufort, and instead of being turned at the age of 19, she's turned around 34. Instead of changing into pastels when she gets out of work, she tends to stick to more gothic styles, not saying she isn't capable of wearing pastels, but it's not as common as it was in the books. In both, she's extremely loyal to Eric. She's blunt, doesn't sugarcoat anything. She shows a distaste for vampire and human alike. Like, she's just not a very friendly, like, how's it going type of person. She has a morbid sense of humor, seems apathetic to people's problems. She kind of just doesn't give a shit. However, in the books, she is more friendly to Sookie. I would say they're almost friends. They're not like bestie pals, but she's a lot more friendly to Sookie. In the show, she shows a lot more disgust and discontent and annoyance to Sookie, while in the book, she's more of like on friendlier terms. Bill has black hair, brown eyes, pale as the moon. He was turned into a vampire in 1868, the age of 30. He fought in the Civil War and married a farmer with 3 children. However, within the books, there's like a typo or something where it says that he has 5 children instead of 3, and they never talk about it. So I don't really know how many children that he had, but he had kids. Alright, and Lorena caught sight of Bill and became enthralled with him and went, "Mine." So she stalked him for a while and then eventually caught up to Bill and turned him into a vampire. Keep her as her own. When he eventually decided, hey, I don't want to be here anymore, this is toxic, I'm gonna leave, she turns a woman that sounds, acts, looks like his wife so that he stays with her a little longer, which is just not okay. Don't be doing that. In the show, he has brown hair and brown eyes. Instead of being turned in 1868, he was turned in 1865. Now, he's turned around the same age of 30. They kind of just changed his birthday. So they moved his birthday back, and then they turned his turn date back. So it still fits around the same timeline. However, this was during the Civil War instead of after. He was returning home and came upon Lorena's house. She allowed him in, cleaned him up, fed him, but instead of allowing him to leave, she attacks him and forces him to drink her blood and turn him into a vampire. He obviously can't go back to his normal life because, well, he's a vampire now. The relationship is just as toxic as it is in the books. It's not a good dynamic. She turned him for selfish reasons. He didn't ask to be turned. It was against his will. Now, Bill has done some very terrible things, but he does try to be good, even though sometimes he is terrible at it. He's a bit dull and not exactly the funnest person to be around, but he does have charisma, and he is protective, sometimes a little too much, but he is protective of those he cares about. But he does have the tendency to just be a dick. But I am an Eric girly, so I'm a little biased. One of the bigger character differences between the show and the book is Tara. Tara Duron has an olive-like complexion, black hair, brown eyes. She looks successful, attractive, and secure in most of her outfits. She's kind, calm, and caring. She owns a clothing business, very successful one. They don't talk much about her family. However, she did have abusive parents. Most of the abuse was from her mother. She does end up starting a family. I believe she has twins. She does have some tribulations and trials to go throughout the books. Her life ain't all peaches. But she does end up with a happy ending. Tara Thornton, in the show, has black hair, dark brown eyes, but she is not kind, caring, or calm. Tara's kind of aggressive. She is very standoffish. She doesn't trust easily. She's very, blunt and very, not sugarcoating anything. She had abusive parents, as she did in the books, and she would run over to Sookie's house to protect herself from the beatings, and that's how they became such good friends. She is a very small part in the books. In the show, they made her basically Sookie's best friend. She is a ginormous part of the story, and she is until the final season. Obviously, both went through trauma, but the Tara in the show took it and made herself it really affected her. Her trust, her look on life is just very sad. She's always making happy things, trying to ruin things, and she's always talking bad about herself, and she just, compared from the book to the show, she's a lot happier in the books. In the show, she's kind of she has happy moments. I'm not saying she's never happy, but she's just a lot more rough. Then there's Sam. Sam is a true shapeshifter. He can transform into anything. Any animal he wants. He prefers a border collie, which is just adorable, and I love that. Sam lives in a trailer behind his bar, but he does own a few apartment complexes and duplexes, in town. He owns a few buildings. I wouldn't say he's, loaded, but he's got some money. He has strawberry blonde hair, very warm skin and blue eyes. He's not very tall, but he's built. He's got muscles on him. He is an Army veteran. His family did not want him to go into the Army. They were hoping he'd go to college, but things happen. When his father passed away, his father left him some money, and he used that money to open his bar. In the show, he is of average height with a strong build. He's got gray eyes and shaggy brown hair. He lives in a trailer behind the bar and likes to turn into a border collie. That is exactly the same. However, he got this money because he was given up for adoption by his mother. And when he first shifted into the family dog, his adopted family didn't take it very well. He went to school, and he came home, and the house was empty. They just abandoned his ass, which is rude. He spent time wandering about, and he found a house where he's like, ooh, I can take some stuff from there. He breaks in and basically, like, finds money. Like, it's just out in the open, like, take me. And a woman is waiting inside. She takes advantage of Sam, who is a teenager by this point, and, you know, scares the living shit out of him. So he steals her money, runs off, and starts the bar that way, rather than money from his dad. Arlene is described as a relatively beautiful woman. She dyes her hair like the fakest fire truck red, and cakes her face with makeup. She is sassy and sees herself as a 20-something hot chick, when in reality she's 40. She believes all men are falling at her heels like she's the hottest shit in town, which she is not. She says what she wants, not caring about other people's feelings, very self-centered. Her goal is to be a stay-at-home mom and have a rich husband so she can do basically nothing. Sookie takes her shifts at work so that Arlene can go on dates, and Sookie takes care of her kids, and Arlene is just it's a very one-sided friendship, but Sookie, like, tries to make it work, like, really wants, you know, them to be friends, and Arlene just takes advantage of Sookie left and right. Her biggest problem, other than that, is the fact that when she dates a guy, she changes herself for the guy, like, into what he wants, which is never the way you do things. That is a terrible way to do things. This is really evident when she starts dating a man who's in the group Fellowship of the Sun, it's not a good group to be in. She becomes very mean to Sookie, more than Charity is normally, and even plans to crucify Sookie. Which, what? She helps these people hurt Sookie in a way that literally is gonna kill her. So, like, woman. In the show, they changed her dramatically. Now, obviously, she looks pretty similar. She's got dyed red hair. I don't know if I would say she cakes on makeup, but she does wear a lot of makeup. She does have kids, you know, and Sookie does take her shifts at work and does take care of her kids so that Arlene can go on dates, as it does in the books. However, Arlene is more family-orientated than she was in the books. You know, being a stay-at-home mom would probably be her dream job, but she really cares about her kids. Like, she's very protective of them. She wants to be the best mom she can be. She is a little bigoted sometimes, and she does say some things that I would consider to be very rude, but I think half the time she doesn't realize that it's rude. You know, she kind of says it without thinking. Despite her flaws, she is capable of love, shown when she starts dating Terry. They really dulled down her personality. In the book, she was a ginormous bitch. Big ol' bitch. In the show, she has her moments, but they dulled it down, made her more of a kind human being, which honestly I'm okay with, because in the book she sounded terrible. So at least I can kind of like her now. Now it's time for the events in the books and show that are either different or the same. The first difference is that the books, except for the last one and a few moments here and there, they're all from Sookie's perspective. It is her point of view throughout almost everything. So the only stuff that can happen within those books are things that happen to Sookie directly or that she's heard. So in the show, they switch POVs all the time. Stuff Sookie wouldn't know about. You know, things in government. Things Eric is doing when she isn't there. You know, all Bill. You know, all this different, you know, aspects, which is a good way to do it because then you get more of a story. You get people's backstories. Like, you get Sam's backstory. You get, you know, what happened with Tara's parents. You get these moments that Sookie wouldn't know about unless a character told her or she was there. So you get more of a expansive universe of what's happening because you're getting all these different point of views. The books are all, most, through her lens. So anything that is happening has to either involve Sookie or she has to see it, she has to hear it, it's through Sookie's eyes. Because of this, a lot of the events in the books are, not big scale conflicts. They're all within a realm of affecting Sookie in one way or another. In the show, they do a lot more, worldwide catastrophe level shit. While in the books, it's more of, in town, affecting Sookie, directly, or one of her friends, or something around her, so it's a lot more small-scale conflict. In the books, Lafayette dies. He dies at the end of book 1. In the beginning of season 2 of True Blood, it follows this event very closely. Sookie finds a body in a car in the parking lot of the bar. And in the books, it is Lafayette. In the show, they changed it to Tara's voodoo exorcist, Miss Jeanette. But at first, they played off like it could be Lafayette, and then eventually reveal it's not. And, little tidbit of information, in the books, Lafayette and Tara are not related at all. In the show, I believe they are cousins. In the books, they have no relation. But I'm really glad that they didn't kill Lafayette because, he was a character in book 1 and then they killed him and then that was it. But in the show, he's a big part of the show. He's the comedic relief, and his relationship later on in the show is so cute. Just, I'm so happy he didn't die. Godric is a 1,000-year-old vampire known to be a child toucher and a serial killer. Not a great combo. In the books, he does die in a very similar way as he does in the show, where he goes out to meet the sun. Now, in the show, they made him Eric's maker. In the books, that's not true. And I think the dynamic between the two is quite emotional, especially when Godric decides he's going to kill himself. That moment between him and Eric is just, wow. I think their dynamic was a very interesting one, and it's a change that, it doesn't change a lot to the main story, but it is, I think it really worked for the show. He does die basically the same way in both, however, his role in each media is different. In the books, there is a character known as Bubba. He is a vampire that used to be Elvis Presley. Which is awesome, by the way. Elvis died in the same way he did in our world. However, the morgue attendant was a giant fan of Elvis and decided he can't be gone. However, he kind of waited a little too long to turn him into a vampire. He was dead longer than he should have been. And when he came back, he was kind of brain damaged. He didn't remember much of his human life at all. And if you brought up the fact that he was Elvis, he got very violent. They didn't show much of this in the books, but they just mentioned that if it brought up, he went into a violent rage. He did not like talking about it. So he might be Elvis, but he doesn't want to talk about being Elvis. That's why he goes by Bubba. Now, he still has his talent, I believe, sometime in the books. He does sing, and he's still got his Elvis talent. Just don't bring up his Elvis life. If you're confused, as I was when I learned about Bubba, it's because he is not in the show at all. Which he should have been, because that sounds fucking awesome. However, there is a character in the show named Jessica who is not in the books. So they kind of, instead of taking a character from the books and putting him in the show, they created a new character. Now, Jessica is nothing like Elvis. They're not similar in any sense of capacity, but it seems like they kind of took Jessica and put it into Bubba's place, being that person, I guess you could say. Jessica was a good Christian girl who snuck out, turned into a vampire by Bill against her will, but eventually she does learn to really enjoy her vampire life, the freedom of it. Obviously, she does have issues. She doesn't want to kill everybody. But she has to learn control, how she can date, because that's difficult. And she really enjoys the freedom. She becomes, her own person. She's a really integral part of the TV show. And I was shocked when I found out she wasn't in the books. So I think her role was instead of Bubba. But I feel like they should have just put Bubba in there anyway, because I think that would have been cool. I touched on this earlier, but Tara's character kind of got gypped in the show. In the book, she's a successful, clothing store owner. She, has kids. She does go through it, but it's not, she gets a happier ending. In the show, she just gets shit upon. She gets turned into a vampire, which does not happen in the book. She stays human. She gets turned into a vampire and then gets killed off screen. We don't even get to see her die. She becomes a vampire, I believe, in season 6. And she dies, I believe, off screen in the first episode of season 7. The actress who played Tara said that, she was really happy with the fact that Tara went out fighting, and that is totally fine. It's a cool way to go. However, they don't show it. It's an off-screen death. I feel like if Tara was fighting for her life from a hep vampire, which is what happened, they should have shown it. I believe she was trying to protect her mother. She got in a fight, and she lost. However, they don't show it, and then Sookie kind of gets over it very quickly, which it's like, that was your best friend. And in the show, they were like, this. And then she dies, and Sookie's like, what the fuck, man? Mourn for her. Do something. So in the book, she gets a much happier ending. I wouldn't say it's like rainbows and sunshine, but it's better than what she got in the show, man. She died. Dude, what the hell? And you didn't even get to see it. Dude. Eric and Sookie's relationship is quite different from the show to the book. In both, they are, they have this thing going on where they're like, maybe. But in the books, it is a bigger part of the story. Like, Eric is, I believe, in every single book. And they have an intimate moment in almost every single one of them. In the second book, Eric drinks her blood to save her from an attack. I believe she was poisoned. So he basically sucks the poison out. Later on, he tricks her into drinking his blood. Now, blood exchanges are very intimate, and it intensifies feelings between a pair. In the third book, Eric gives her a significant amount of blood after she is staked. When Eric loses his memory in book 4, he stays with Sookie for protection. The two grow very intimate, and it's very steamy. But it is short-lived because at the very end, he loses memory of all this happening, which really breaks Sookie's heart because, it was nice. In the 7th book, Sookie drinks his blood a 3rd time, which creates a full bond. Now, Sookie is uncomfortable with this, obviously. However, a vampire in the command of the Vampire Queen of Louisiana tried to force this on her, and Eric was kind of the better of two evils. This bond lets each other know their presence, their moods, and intensifies feelings, because of course it does. Eric eventually recovers his memories from the time they had spent together in that steamy 4th book action. And he admits this to Sookie, but it doesn't end up with them suddenly let's do it. It kind of just sucks. But he's in love with her. In the 9th book, he marries Sookie vampire style to protect her from the King of Nevada. She is not happy with how it went down because he basically tricked her into the vampire marriage, but she relents because she understands that he did it to protect her. They begin a intimate relationship and exchange blood again. They're really into that. However, this doesn't last forever. In book 12, she has to come to the terms with the fact that Eric is drinking off of younger women. I believe in book 13, he leaves her for someone else. It sucks. The relationship starts to blossom in book 2, and it kind of does this, where they're really close, and then they separate, and then they're close, and then they separate. But Eric is always a constant in Sookie's life. He's always there. Even if they're not, in a relationship at the time, he is there. Obviously, the relationship is not built on trust, because a lot of the stuff that they've gotten into is because Eric was lying. But, come on. We gotta work something out, you know what I mean? The books were kind of like a supernatural situation. They had fairies, they had demons, they had angels, they had a lot of creatures in them. And the show kind of stuck to the vampires. They did introduce fairies, but they didn't go into the mythology like the books did. The books also had demons, and they kind of introduced that a little bit throughout the show, like when Lafayette's boyfriend was possessed because of his witchcraft by a demon. They didn't really go into it much. They were there, but they weren't there. They were plot holes and plot points that didn't go anywhere. Supposedly, Sookie's telepathy that she has in both the book and the show is from a demon deal. In the show, they kind of just said it was fairy related. Demons and other creatures in the Fae world were much closer to Suki's storyline than that of the fairies themselves, and they kind of didn't really go into it. A lot of it was just like dead ends, and they didn't cover it properly. A Maenad, I think I'm saying that right, named Callisto travels to Bontemps looking for payment. She is an emissary of the god Dionysus. Is that how you say it? Dionysus? He's the god of wine. And she usually goes to people who own bars and like, hey, pay up, bitch. In the process, Suki is poisoned as a sign to Eric be like, hey, bitch. While Suki and her vampire associates travel to Dallas to look for a missing vampire, Callisto gets into a sexual relationship with Sam. Because why not? You know what I mean? In the last orgy of Living Dead in Dallas, which is a weird phrase, Callisto shows up at this orgy, tells Suki who killed Lafayette, and then murders everybody at the orgy except for Tara and a guy named Eggs, and then leaves. She goes off to another town to get tribute for her god of wine, and she's mentioned, I think, in other books, but that's about it. In the show, however, they get more in-depth with the details of this character, and change it up quite a bit. In the show, her name is Marianne. She's the same woman who tried to take advantage of Sam many years later. She shows up and Sam apologizes, not because he felt bad about taking her money, but because he was scared she was going to do something. She grows quite close to Tara and tries to bring her to her side. And there's a lot of ripping out hearts. There are sex-fueled orgies that happen, and she does try and take control of the people around her. She does get involved with Sam, however she plans to kill him, to sacrifice him. But Sam escapes. She doesn't take kindly to that and tries to get the town to find him. Eventually, she kidnaps Suki. Bill brings Sam. Here's your guy. Right? And then Sam is stabbed, which is not cool. Suki runs into the woods, and Marianne follows. Now, the only way for Marianne to die, because she is invincible, the only way for her to die is to believe that her god has disowned her, or that it is her time. So as she's chasing Suki, she hears a growl, and a giant bull appears behind her, and she believes that this is her god. And the bull rams into her, and she believes that she should be the sacrifice, that it is her time, so she gives up her immortality and dies. However, the bull transforms into Sam. Sam's okay because Bill healed him. Yeah. She dies, crumbles, and turns into black skeleton, I believe. She dies. The main story of the show was centered around the love triangle between Suki, Bill, and Eric. Now, what's funny about this is that the show starts out very similar to the first book, where Suki meets Bill. She can't hear his thoughts. It's very calming to her because, she can hear everybody's thoughts, but it's silent around him. He's the first vampire that she met. They fall in love. However, he breaks that trust, and it doesn't mend, at all. Once Bill and Suki officially break up in book 3, he becomes a side character. He's there, but he's not integral to the story. They get in a fight in book 6 to the point where she says she never wants to see him again. He breaks her trust so badly that she doesn't even want to see his ugly goddamn face. Suki has a way more intimate relationship with Eric, and he is a way bigger part in the books. However, she doesn't end up with him either. In the show, she doesn't end up with neither. She ends up with a guy I believe we never see. In the books, she does end up with someone who is not Eric or Bill. However, it's Sam, which I'm like, what? In the show, Sam is, at least in the beginning, clearly infatuated with Suki, and Suki kind of pushes him off and goes for dangerous vampire men. And, at one point in the show, I believe season 6, she mentions that she always thought they would end up together, and Sam's just like, you never cared about my feelings. Sam liked Suki, and Suki chose anybody else. She didn't, talk about his feelings, she didn't acknowledge them, she kind of just went this way, while Sam was over here. So, they brought up this point, and in the books, she does end up with him, which I think, I haven't read every single book, but to me that just feels weird. But I am more knowledgeable in the show, even though I've never finished it. I have seen more of it than I've read the books, so. But in both, she ends up with neither, in my personal opinion, even though her relationship was a little toxic with Eric. I think Eric and her at least had more chemistry than her and Sam ever did. And I think her and Eric would have been cute. A lot of people, because within the book, she does have different relationships, not just Eric. She has with other people. A lot of people think she should have ended up with Quinn. My personal opinion, it should have been Eric, but I am very biased. Obviously, I love Eric. I loved the show counterpart of Eric. I loved the book version of Eric. Eric had issues, but he was cool. And I like Vikings. So I'm even more biased than normal, but hey. It was cool. Alright guys, that is the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed. I always have a lot of fun with this because usually when it comes to doing books versus shows, I've seen the show first. In this scenario, I have seen the show first and then I read the books. So my perspective is different because there's some fans who've read every single book and then they watch the show, so they're biased in that respect. I am the opposite, where I watch the show first and then read the books. Usually because I move toward visual media more than I move toward book. If there's any fun facts that I didn't mention that you think would be, that are really interesting, comment down below. I'd love to know them. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll be back again next week with another video. Alright guys, I'll see you later.